Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started very, very shortly. I see a lot of people are still coming in through our virtual door here, so we'll just give them just a moment. And if you're here to attend Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trends monthly webinar, then you've made it to the right room. So thank you for joining us. We're discussing academic program evaluation for higher education. Each month, we share the latest trends and insights for academic program planning. We are pleased to have with us Bob Atkins, Gray's founder and best-selling higher education author. We also have a number of our other incredible Gray team. So feel free to reach out or talk to them and chat with them and each other in the chat. So allow me to share a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions, place them in the Q&A section and we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. Bob loves questions and we can follow up with you offline if we do run out of time. You can also use the chat area for those comments and discussion and questions as well. After the webinar, I will be sending you a link to the slides and the video recording. And now, without further ado, I will hand things off to Bob to get us started.
Thank you very much, Marianne. Thank you to everybody out there. Very much appreciate your giving us your time this afternoon. I can only imagine how busy all of you are, and very much appreciate your coming to listen to us today. So what are we going to talk about? First, I'll describe what a program evaluation system is, and the headline is it's more than just data or software. Then we'll talk about student demand, employment, the program of the month, and we'll give you a brief summary. I really would want to reinforce what Marianne said. If you have a question, it could be about these charts, it could be about some other trend in higher education, please feel free, add it to the chat. We'll try and take your questions. I'll try and answer them as we go along. I've edited down the number of charts in this presentation a little bit, so we have time, I think, to take those questions as we go. So what is a program evaluation system? Well, it does have to cover 4 topics, and you need data for most of these topics. So one topic is markets. What is the student demand? What do employers want? What's the competitive intensity for that particular program in your local market? The system also has to tell you what's going on with your economics or margins. What is your direct instructional revenue, cost, and margin? Now, you don't do that because you're for-profits. You need to know that so you can have big programs that generate margin, that subsidize small mission-critical programs that can't stand on their own 2 feet financially. And that cross-subsidy is a normal, organic part of higher education. And as long as it's going to mission-appropriate programs, then that makes sense. And as long as you have money to do it. Then you get to academic standards. You know, what are the programs? What are the student outcomes? What kind of external tests are there, and how are we doing against those tests? And then, you know, it's shown as one element of this, but it's really the central element across all of these, which is what is the mission of your institution? Why does it exist? What's its focus? When I say focus, I mean, are you a liberal arts institution? Are you a technical institution? And that would have an influence on the programs that you might want to choose. I should say, though, at this point, that it's not all about the data. Love to give you an algorithm that tells you what programs to offer, but that's not really how the world works. To make this work, you need to involve the right people in the right process to make program decisions so that they're both accepted by the institution and, importantly, embed the knowledge that the folks in your organization have, both about their academic discipline and about the market in which you compete. And without that, you're really not going to make the best program decisions. But it does require the data and information as well. So it's not a completely qualitative process, but it's also not one where, you know, there's an algorithm that can tell you what to do. So let's talk about trends. Google is a source we love to look at. We believe it's a forward-looking source. It's telling you what's going to happen in the market, what people are interested in. We're thinking about enrolling or selecting their major. So think of this as something that's looking out 6 to 12 months into the future. As we go through this, you can see that I've got a black bar, that's 2021, a gray bar, that's 2022, and 2023 is the blue bar. Been interesting looking at this data for the last year or two. Beginning of this year, these numbers were coming down, an average of 7% year over year. So trending down, still a concern. feels like a lingering impact of declining enrollment and sort of discouraging. Since July, we've been seeing an uptick, which I'm thrilled to be able to report. On average, since July, the index is coming up 8.4%. In December alone, it was up 7%. So we are seeing some signs that are optimistic out there about student interest in higher education. That interest comes at a price. So we show you this data as an indicator of relative competition, and also for those of you who are engaged in digital marketing, what you may be looking at in terms of rising costs to acquire leads, to pay per clicks, literally. And if we look back at January 2022, a click cost $6.47. Now, don't think, that's pretty cheap. If that got you a student, you'd be thrilled. But for every click, you don't get a student. In fact, if I were making an educated guess, you're looking at least 100 clicks to get one student enrolled, and probably more. So that $6 quickly turns into $600 per actual enrolled student. Now, you can also see this is trending up about 10% over the course of the year. And we looked at 2023, and it looked as though it stabilized around $8. You can see it was $8.07 in January, then $5, then $16, then $3. So it's hovering around that $8 number. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, it jumped up 9%. So I'm a little worried that we are seeing a price increase for clicks. Intensifying competition is usually what that means. And that's going to come heavily from your online players because they are the most aggressive in bidding for clicks. Now, keep in mind, too, that they're under a lot of pressure. We all took a hit in COVID, but when COVID ended, on-ground players began to see an uptick, and I think many of you heard the enrollment numbers this year coming out of the National Student Clearinghouse for fall, up 0.7% at the bachelor's level. So there's reason to believe that enrollment overall is now stable and or increasing somewhat. But what happened to the online guys is when COVID ended, a lot of their online students left. So I think they're facing a much more substantial battle to maintain enrollment than many of you may be. And I suspect that might be underneath this trend and them competing more strongly for clicks. Google program keywords. So what are people looking for out there? Not surprisingly, you see registered nursing and business administration at the top of this list with close to 600,000 searches each in just December alone. Now, those are the two largest programs in the United States. That's not surprising. What I did find surprising, you look at this next batch of 3 solid tech programs. Cybersecurity Information Assurance now has the 3rd highest search volume of any program in the United States. That's just a mind-blowing statistic for a program that barely existed 10 years ago. Data analytics, data science, also not really front of mind if you went back to, say, 2015, the 4th highest. And computer science, yes, of course, we've seen that for years. Very big program, 350,000 searches. Overall, you can see we've got 2 health-related programs here. To me, that's a bit surprising. Usually when you look at the biggest, you're going to see a lot of healthcare. So I think that's a bit of a change over time. And the second program, social work, at 281,000, not really, strictly speaking, a healthcare program, though it is health-related. So not a lot of representation of healthcare in these largest programs right now. And then we've got a variety of what I'll call other. Business fits in that category: criminal justice, human resources, law, and marketing coming in at number 10 with 226,000 searches. So these are the biggest programs out there in terms of student interest. When we think about fast growing, we get back to data again. Business analytics is number 1. AI, you see a little bit further down the list, growing 58%. And then project management, generally a technical discipline, up 49%. Health-related, only one makes the list: sports and fitness administration and management. And then finally, there's a group of eclectic ones: music general up 62%, marketing management up 53%, a little bit consistent with the size we saw before, advertising up 52%, environmental science up 44%, divinity up 41%, electrical engineering up 39%. This divinity is a very interesting one. I would never have expected that to make our fast growers, but it keeps cropping up. It hasn't for about, I would say, 12 to 18 months. been our fastest growing, but it was regularly there for a couple of years before that. So it's one to keep an eye on and see if it's growing in your area. It may be one of those sort of surprising, it's not a huge program, but a surprising growth program. Now let's talk about what's going on in enrollment. So we've moved from the future, if you will, of what people want to get at some point when they enroll. Now we're actually talking about what they enrolled in fall 2023. So we're talking very current data. We've got a very heavy dose of tech here. 6 of our top 10 are actually tech programs. So we've got data analytics, computer science, or software engineering, excuse me, architectural and building science, cybersecurity, in business analytics, and computer programming, all amongst our
We do have
fastest growing
a
programs.
question, if you don't mind.
Fire away.
Data science is the same. Is the data science the same as business analytics? There are a lot of terms for the same program.
It's not the same program. They are offered by different, it may be much of the same content. So you keep that in mind, but schools will offer them under the different labels. Part of that depends on whether it's the business college offering it, or if it's the liberal arts college offering it, or the dean in each of those cases wants to have their own program to pray over. So they can be somewhat different. And I think if you looked at what the work people did in those courses, you'd probably find that there is a difference in terms of the sorts of things that they apply data science to. So that said, I think the techniques and so forth in both are probably very similar. So that's that. If there are, again, other questions, please feel free to ask. There are, at a minimum, we know they're reported separately. If you'd like to see those added together, which wouldn't be a bad idea, we're happy to do that and look at them with you and see what they add up to when you put them back together. The answer would be very large. And let's see, exercise physiology, applied psychology, cognitive science, and HR all making our top 10 with over 10% enrollment growth. Why does this matter? If you're trying to grow your institution, if you're trying to address an enrollment shortfall you may have had, one of the most effective ways to do that is to make sure you have the fast growing programs. And by the way, the large ones as well, because when you start those up, they'll add a lot to your enrollment until they stabilize, and you've got a full 4 years of students in them. So these are really vital in thinking about where you invest. Again, if you have the program, you can invest in marketing because that marketing is going to be going to a relatively receptive audience. If you don't have the program, it's something you may want to think about adding in order to drive enrollment. So that's why we share this information with you. My goal is really fundamentally to help everybody grow. We do some work on efficiency, but that's not where my heart is.
And Bob, we do have another question too, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You mentioned nursing, but what about the allied health programs?
We cover more of those on a webinar we ran just yesterday, focused more on the community college space. The answer is just like 4-year programs, a lot of variability there. There's some hot programs in the 2-year space that would have made this list. Surge Tech is one. And Monica, if you don't mind, there was another one that was on the list just a minute before we started this. So, but I remember Surge Technology is there, and happy to go look at the others as well. But we do have a whole separate webinar on that, and you're welcome to. It's done, and it'll be on our website in another day, so you can pull that data down. Let me share one headline from that. What we saw in that, in particular, was an increase in interest in what I would call, the more tech programs. I don't mean IT tech in this case. I mean, think auto tech, diesel tech, both made the top 10. So there were a fair number of what I would call hands-on machines, technical programs that were towards the top of that list. All right, now I have a quiz question for everybody. So pay attention for a moment, go to your chat, and tell me what the top country is in international student demand last month. Who And this is for search volumes from students overseas looking for schools in the US. What was the #1 country?
Ooh, we have some good answers coming in. We have
I
India,
should, I'm
China.
sorry. For people who said China, you're welcome to take a second crack at it because China, unfortunately, is not in our database. And I'm pretty sure if it were, it would be the biggest. So you guys were right, but you might want to take a second guess. See, India, solid guess. I was shocked. So here's the real answer. Wait, I'm one chart ahead of myself. But let me go down here. Nepal was #1. Tanzania was #2. Afghanistan was #3. Ethiopia, #4. Algeria, #5. And we see India all the way down there at #8. I find this really intriguing because it demonstrates the importance of having a diverse portfolio of international recruiting going on. Because you are all right that, if you look out there, China has been the biggest single country in terms of interest in US education for some time. India is normally second, but in this case, you can see somebody else has moved into the top slot, and we have a number of countries I would never have imagined. But Africa frequently makes this list. Normally you see Nigeria on it, actually. It's not here this time. And it's interesting to see Ethiopia. And I hope all those poor Afghanis can get visas to come here. It's not an easy trick, having just helped somebody do that. So, I again found this fascinating. Where do they want to go? Well, they've all seen the movies. They want to go to California. Let's go back and talk about what the fastest growing program is. And, I would have guessed here that it would be some form of engineering, probably computer science up there on the top. And it is in the top 10. But I did not expect to see education so high. I didn't expect to see marketing so high. And you can see the rest of the list here. Even kinesiology, exercise science, to me, that's a surprise. And here's the headline good news. Interest from overseas is up 41% year over year. That is an enormous opportunity. You can see historically, if we go back a couple of years, it's been flattish to down. So this is a very recent event, and one I think that, again, bodes well for enrollment in higher ed, as long as we can keep producing visas. So I know the government stands between you and your students here. I was talking with somebody the other day about this, and one of their points was, jump on that early, fast, and with focus, so that your students can get through the U.S. visa process in time to come to your school. Let's see, non-degree courses. So we've been talking about this for years. When I say we, I mean all of us. Is college going to go to the way of the dodo, and everybody's just going to take a couple of courses offline or online, I should say. In particular skills that they may need to get. So we do track that. In particular, we keep track of what's going on at Udemy and Coursera, who are kind enough to report total enrollment by course since the inception of their program. So it's a little bit of a trick. You have to look at last month's data, number of students enrolled, and this month's data on number of students enrolled, and subtract to find out how many students actually signed up in the most current month, which we keep track of, and that's what this data is. I found it very interesting in Coursera that, fundamentally two streams here. One is classic data tech, getting certifications, getting particular knowledge. Here you can see a lot of it's about data. #1, foundations of UX, user experience design, technical support. This is a new one, AI for everyone. Haven't seen that until recently. Python and data visualization. These aren't surprising. These are the sorts of things, if you went on Udemy, all of these would be tech courses of one type or another. But what's interesting about Coursera is there shows us that there's almost equal interest in what I would call personal development, science of well-being, learning how to learn. This is more of a career program, starting a successful project, and introduction to psychology. So I think when you're thinking about these courses, it'd be very easy to go down the tech and certification side. But I think there's a whole other stream out there of opportunity around personal development, cultivating myself as an entity, or to use my favorite German word that I learned about 3 days ago, Bildung, becoming and maturing as an individual. So I think that's actually a big opportunity out there. And yes, there's a huge tech opportunity as well. Let's take a look at employment now. What do people actually want to hire? I always hammer on this. So for those of you who've heard me talk before, I apologize, but we keep having to say this until the world changes the way it counts. And I'm pleased to report that I found one government source that actually has changed the way it counts. That was very heartening. It finally got through. But the foundation of most reporting on jobs available for college graduates is something called the National Center for Education Statistics Crosswalk. And there are other crosswalks that are predicated on the same principle that students prepare to go into specific jobs, and that we should only count the jobs in the fields for which those students are directly prepared. So think nurses study nursing, they graduate, they go into nursing. Makes great sense. The only problem is that isn't actually how the world works. So we've spent a great deal of time and money actually buying data to find and looking at the census information from the American American Community Survey to understand what people really do. And what we found is out of the 634 programs we analyzed, 493 of those programs, less than 20% of the graduates went into fields for which they were directly prepared. So in 77% of programs, fewer than 20% of the graduates are going into direct prep jobs. Imagine all that labor data that you keep hearing about, there are no jobs for this or no jobs for that, is founded on something that is fundamentally wrong. It's not the way, well, it's not really fair. It is not based on the way the world works. And indeed, if you go to the National Center for Education Statistics page and look at the preamble to their crosswalk, it says this crosswalk is not based on empirical data. So how wrong is it? Well, it actually is worse than it might seem from the prior chart. So it does depend a lot on the individual program. Nurses really do go into nursing at about an 80% rate. That is actually either the highest or the second highest rate of any program. But if we look at other programs, something as seemingly normal as biology, you find that NCS says that there are only 3 occupations that those people are prepared for. Now, remember, this means that most reports about jobs available for graduates are only going to report jobs in those 3 areas. And they're natural science managers, post-secondary teachers, other, and secondary school teachers, but not special ed teachers. So that's not a lot of jobs, and the pay in all those jobs is low. Now let's look at what they really do. And this is based, again, on a data set we now have over 60 million individuals, where they went to, what degree they got, and what work they did after that, what jobs they held after that. And you find that actually those 3 aren't even listed in the top 10. General and operations managers is number 1. Chief executives is number 2. Now, a little caveat on chief executives. It includes a lot of sole business owners. It also includes really most flavors of senior executive. So it's not all chief executives as you would think of it running Fortune 500 companies. Managers, software developers is one of the top 4 fields these people go into, computer, other, and so forth. So it turns out that people with a science degree can go into a lot of different fields, not just these 3, which means that all the data you see on employment statistics is probably wrong. And you got to be very careful when you're looking at it. And if you're working with a vendor, to ask this question about one of the more boring topics in history, which is how do you do your crosswalk? You really need to know the answer to that to know what you're looking at. And most of the time, it's going to significantly understate the jobs available for graduates of your programs. Give you another example. Public health says you can only go into 4 fields: community health, health education, and so forth. In reality, they go into hundreds of fields, 766, and they're all over the place in terms of what they do. So they take things that they learn in public health, like statistics, and find other places that those are relevant. However, even though we can tell you that there are more jobs out there for those graduates than they might think, the actual number of jobs out there in the United States is going down. Now, it's going down from a very high level coming out of COVID, where there's a huge burst in job postings. primarily, by the way, for lower paid jobs in industries that were most hit by COVID, like hospitality and restaurant. But we're now starting to see a decline off relatively low levels, 21% down year over year in the volume of job postings in December. So that is a concern. It might be good news in the sense that the feds are likely to, not tighten up anymore. It is worrisome for the economy, but here's a silver lining to that cloud. Enrollment in higher education varies with the change in the unemployment rate. So as the unemployment rate goes up, so does enrollment. People don't get jobs, they go to school. We all know this, but we kind of forgot it. And I've been hearing all this stuff about demographic cliffs. Headline, there wasn't one, there isn't one, probably not going to be one. And if anybody wants to know more about that, please give me a call. I can run you through the stats. It's really surprising how wrong that whole logic is, besides being unproductive. So jobs are trending down. The good news for you is that's probably going to send people back to school. And actually, if you look over those, positive numbers coming through in enrollment that we see out of the National Student Clearinghouse, they may well reflect a softening job market. So let's talk about one program in particular. And we keep track of some 1,500 programs. We score and rank them all, giving them an overall score. We color code all that. You see these are green. In our color coding, green is good, and it shades off till you get to pink, and pink is bad. So you can always sort of remember green is good, red is bad. And that may sound qualitative, but the colors are actually geared to the percentile score for each of about 50 variables. And so it's comparing that performance of that program on that variable to 1,500 other programs, very much like a grade curve. And so the percentiles really give you a good sense of not just whether it's a good program, but how does it stack up relative to every other program in the system. And the four categories, we have the overall score, we keep track of student demand, competitive intensity, jobs, and degree fit. So let's take a look at one program here, mechatronics, and dive into it a little bit more. So first things first, student demand. We can tell by the color, it's not green. So it's not great. It's 77th percentile, so it's not terrible either. And as we start to dig in, Google search volumes are good. They're at the 75th percentile. And I'll explain why I'm a little, blasé about a 75 number in just a second. International page views reflects the kind of strength we saw before. This particular program is at the 94th percentile in international interest. New student enrollment is good, 80th percentile. Sum of on-ground and online is 479. And notice that there is no online presence in this particular program. So this is one where all of you with on-ground campuses have an advantage. Now, why am I blasé about the 75th percentile? Well, in this case, this used to be a positive statement, but you're Harvard, and I recognize that comes a lot more baggage than it did just a few weeks ago. But you can be very selective about what programs you choose to focus on. Why? There are 1,500 programs competing for your money. At most, if you wanted to add new programs, you could do what? Maybe 5 in a year, maybe some more. But even if it's 10, you're talking about 10 out of 1,500, if you will, applicants for programs that are worth you're investing in. So your bar for a new program should be very high, and there'll still be programs that will meet that bar. But one of the traditional weaknesses in program analysis is looking at one program at a time, and you see something like this and it looks good. What you may not realize without the ranking and such is there was 3 or 4 that were much, much better than the one you're looking at. And that's why you need that overview of all program options so that you can pick from amongst the best. And your standards should be very high when you're thinking about incremental investment because you have a lot of choices when you're doing that. So enough on that. But, I look at these, and if they're not up in the 90s, I'm not excited. So what's happening in terms of growth? Well, completions are up 4%. New student enrollment, and remember, completions is kind of backwards looking because the most current data, that's IPEDS, just came out for 2022. So it's automatically 2 years old. But really, we're looking at a 4-year college. They picked their program 2 to 4 years before they graduated. So In practice, we're looking at data from 2018 about what students want. So it's a good thing. It helps you understand how big a program is. It'll help you with your competitors, but it's a little out of date in terms of what students want right now. Google Search, as I mentioned, is forward-looking. It's down 8%. And enrollment, which is very current, is up 6%. It's a bit confusing when you get three metrics and they're not saying the same thing. I think that confusion is probably appropriate. What it says is there's some ambiguity about how fast this program is growing. In particular, the demand for it may be weakening if that Google search volume is indeed telling us what's happening going forward. I wouldn't go overboard on that. When I see enrollment going up, that's a very, kind of rock solid statistic. It's pretty current. So we may just be getting a little bit of sort of random fluctuation in one of the variables. But when you see them and they're disjoint like this, I think you have to step away and say, we can't be sure what's happening in terms of growth for this program. Now let's switch to employment. And here we can look at job postings in BLS. Better rankings, by the way, we're up into the 80s in terms of percentiles. This is comparatively stronger in terms of job demand than it was on student demand. We can see what percentage of these graduates end up underemployed. So they get their degree and they go to work at Starbucks. Do keep in mind on underemployment, sometimes this is a way station for people who've graduated, but they're waiting to go to grad school. So they'll show up underemployed for a year or two before they go on to graduate school. But nonetheless, you want that number, we want it to be low. And actually, when you look at this in terms of our percentiles, that is a pretty low number. It's in the 14th percentile. So that's pretty good in terms of percentage of the population that ends up underemployed in that period right after college. Growth rates, some ambiguity here. Like the rest of the job market, it was growing and it's starting to slow down a little bit with 0.8% growth in the last year and 2.5% growth for the 3 years. Job postings per graduate, very good, 5.1. We're up in the 98th percentile. So this is one of those fields where if they get a degree, they'll probably get a job. Wages are very good, 96th percentile at $63,000 at entry level. Once they get out of that entry level and they're sort of in their 4-year period after graduation, I'm sorry, more than 4 years after graduation, the pay jumps up to $84,000. That too is at the 83rd percentile. And if they go on to get a master's, and by the way, they might get a master's in a different field, that'll jump up to 104,000. So if you're thinking about this program and why you might want to offer it and why people might want to take it, on the one hand, there are not a lot of students who know what mechatronics is, and they may not therefore be interested, or there may be other reasons why they're not interested. But they should know that on the other side of this, there's probably a job and it's going to pay pretty well. And actually, they do some fascinating stuff with robots with this degree. So, that's, and you may want to think about it in terms of, do I have enough students who'd be interested in something like this? If I do, the outcomes for them will be great. Competition, only 21 institutions offering this program. 4 schools added it, so it is growing in terms of a number of competitors. Median program completions is 11. That's not huge, but it is above average. It's the 65th percentile. And interestingly, the number of people completing is going up in the median program. I look at that because that gives me an indication people who offer this program are seeing growth for their program. So that's an encouraging sign. Google cost per click is $8. That's actually okay, 75th percentile. It's getting a little expensive. The competition index here is about average at 0.53. That statistics is on a 0 to 1 scale, with 1 being most competitive. This is pretty much in the middle. Remember, when we're reporting this at the 82nd percentile, that's telling you for other higher ed programs, it's at the 80th percentile. When Google reports competition, it's telling you across all companies who are bidding for leads, clicks, it's at the 50th percentile. So that includes, Hershey selling candy bars as well as higher ed. So that's why it's lower, if you will, over in terms of that index versus where it ranks in the percentile. And there's no online for this, which is great for those of you with on-ground campuses. Keep going. There we go. What degree level? This really is fairly straightforward. This is a bachelor's or master's program. Very few people get a degree lower than that in this field. And when it comes to employment, it's primarily bachelor's and then again, a big slug of masters. But also notice that's a very high percentage of people with a doctorate. And obviously it's because a lot of this is very high level science that's being done to build robots. So this requires a very good education across a wide number of disciplines, whether that's electronics, electromechanical systems, and so forth.
Bob, we have one other quick question. Can you offer just a little more explanation of what cost per click is?
Sure. So let me go back to that page. So here we can see in this particular program, it's $8. If you went into Google and you said, I want to sell Tootsie Rolls, you would have to go in and bid on keywords that are associated with Tootsie Rolls. So you might, let's say you bid on the keyword Tootsie Roll, logically enough. Well, you're not the only person bidding to sell Tootsie Rolls. So the more competitive the market is, the higher that price will go to get a single click for somebody interested in Tootsie Rolls. And so that's what it is. Google literally charges you that. They debit your bank account every time somebody hits click. So that's what drives it. And your marketing agency is going to know about this, as well your marketers. It is a good way to reach people who are interested in a specific program if you pick the keywords associated with that particular program. Because if they don't click, you don't pay. So it's not like putting up a billboard where you put it up, and if nobody responds, you've still paid a lot of money for the billboard. With this digital pay-per-click advertising, if nobody clicks, you don't pay anything. By the way, there's another catch to that, which is nobody clicks, they demote your ad and you disappear from the first page or even the second or whatever page of Google. So, and if you want to come back to the first page, you got to pay more. So there's a very complex dynamic in the bidding and auction for those keywords. Whoever asked that, I hope that answered your question. If there's any more, I'm happy to talk about it a little bit more. I think that was truly. So please feel free to bounce back if you want to. When you're looking at this stuff, it's also important to know how expensive a program is to offer. And when you look at your own programs, whether you're running those efficiently. And to know that, you need some sort of benchmark that says, what does it cost other people to run those same programs? So here you can see an extract from our benchmarking database that the folks who subscribe to economics with us have access to. So for engineering technology, the dark blue bar represents the cost for this particular hypothetical and disguised client. And over here, we can pick up the actual cost for the client, which is $211 per student credit hour. We can see that the 25th percentile is the green slash, so they're well above the 25th percentile cost. They're right around the median, slightly less actually. That's the blue slash. And there are a lot of folks running this program at much higher cost than this, well over $400. That's the 75th percentile, which is the red slash. So at a glance, you can tell whether what this program costs. If you don't offer it, it's going to cost you about $200 to $300 a credit hour to teach. And if you have the program, you can tell whether you're delivering it as cost effectively as other institutions. So who goes to the program? And you might ask, why do we care? Well, when you're designing your program portfolio, you're inadvertently designing your student population and what the demographics of that student population are going to be in the future. Some programs skew male, some skew female. Some will tend to draw in white men, some will draw in minorities. So as I like to say, each program has its own unique demographic fingerprint, as does this one. It skews 81% male. So if you are trying to increase the number of men on your campus, this is a program you might want to add or emphasize. And you all might stand back and say, well, why would we want to increase men? I think many of you are aware of this, but 60% of the people in college right now are women. So we're looking at 50% more women on campus than men. And I don't think we've got enough space for everybody. And I think we really need to pay a little attention to men and get them into school, because if they don't go to college, they get in a whole lot of trouble, if nothing else. And so I just don't see how we win in the 21st century without a more educated populace and workforce. So whatever we can do to get the folks that are not going to college to come on back, I think is important. And for some reason, men really aren't going to college. The percentage of men going to college has dropped 8 points since 2010. That is a huge decline from, I think it's 51% to 43% of men in that age group going to college. And that can't be good for us going forward. So who else is going? Well, we've got about this normal ratio in the population to this particular program of 8 to 9% for Asian. For some reason, Black students are less likely to take this program. Hispanic also less likely to take this program. 10% of people enrolled versus 16% in the population. You can see white is over-indexing 61%, and international is over-indexing. That's not surprising for a tech program like this at 8% versus 5% on average. So as I say, this is a way of looking at it and saying, okay, if I want to be more inclusive, which programs do I want to emphasize to draw whatever demographic you're after onto my campus? And then we put it all together on a single page for you, and we do this to make it easier for you to get out all the data you might need when you're trying to make a decision. So you don't have to hunt through 50 pages or click back and forth through 100 dashboards to get the information you need. Almost all our key data is right here on a page. And when you get used to the colors, you can analyze this pretty quickly. Medium green, so it's good, but not great. Employment is great, as we talked about. Light blue means student demand is good, but not great. Competition is out there and substantial, so that's why it's pink. And, within any area, you can very quickly, your eye drawn to the areas that you need to be concerned about, as well as the areas like wages here that are very healthy. So as I say, that's why we use colors, also because I'm a history major, and I can't stand looking at all those numbers after a while. So let's summarize. In December, Google searches for academic programs rose 7% year over year. Thank God. Business analytics grew 81%. Google cost per click up 9%. That's not great. People are bidding harder for those clicks. Bachelor's enrollment, delete that. We're cleaning that data up. Data analytics or data science grew 37% at the bachelor's level and another 31% at the master's level. Education programs grew the most in international page views, and we have Nepal as our number one country in international last month. Remember this issue with direct prep crosswalks. They're really not, they don't reflect reality. Just as an example, bio and physical science majors go into 662 occupations, not 3. Mechatronics looks like a very interesting program. The student demand is moderate, but employment opportunities are really good. And it's going to cost you about average. So oftentimes when you look at these programs that require the tech programs, they're relatively expensive because in many cases the instructors are quite expensive. You also have equipment costs that are not included in our costs here. So you'd want to keep it in mind that there's going to be some CapEx to build a mechatronics program. That's my presentation. What I want to do now is I've been joined by Winnell. Winnell leads our customer success team. And I want to give you all an opportunity to identify a program that's of interest to you. You can post it in the chat, and we'll actually look at it here in real time. Also, if you have questions, this is a great time. Please feel free to ask them. Let's see. We did have a question earlier, Winnell,
Yep.
and it was about business analytics versus data analytics, as I recall. So it might be good to look at those two.
Great.
And see what it says.
Yeah, I believe it was data science versus business analytics.
That's right.
Let me share my screen. Really quickly. Okay. Everyone can see program rank, right?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'm gonna look up data science really quickly. So it's funny that we hear data science or data analytics. I'm almost positive the and or is one here for us. In our systems, we're actually combining the two zip codes into one in this case. So we have data analytics and or data science as one zip code in our system. Okay.
And just so everybody knows how we get there, when we are looking at zip codes, we go actually all the way back and look at the college's websites to see what they say the program is. And when we can't tell the difference between a program listed under one zip code and programs listed under the other zip code, we combine them because colleges are going to more or less randomly put them in one or the other.
Yeah, and data science especially is very interesting because it's categorized as an interdisciplinary program in the 30s. So, one of the coolest things of our system is that we can rank all programs and filter them, by 2-digit zip code or 4-digit zip code, and essentially review a family of programs in one view. So just keep in mind that if we were looking at this program together, we would probably start here in a 4-digit view like this, because now you're going to notice that we also have a zip code called business analytics. So the question here would be, how are both of those programs different? And for that, we probably want to lean on the description of the zip code as categorized through IPEDS. Okay, so go ahead, Bob.
Importantly, though, here, what you
Yep.
can see is that they overall ratings are extremely good for both of them. Student demand is great, employment is great, more and more competition, that's not surprising. And we turned off the degree fit for right now, just because we're not sure which degree level you're interested in. So that's been neutralized at 50. Fire away.
Great. So I'm also seeing geography at the bachelor's level, health informatics,
Let's look
construction
at a
engineering.
scorecard before we jump off this one.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to go ahead and click on data science, data analytics, 30.7101. And I'm going to go ahead and click here into the scorecard. Okay, as the scorecard populates, again, we already know what we're expecting to see, right? We're expecting to see strong student demand numbers, and we're expecting to see strong employment numbers from that previous view. And, the competitive intensity was very pink, which in our system suggests very competitive, right? But we're always going to want to dive deeper into that and really identify the specific metrics that might be speaking to that conclusion. So let's start with, student demand at the top left. Immediately, when I look at the student demand bucket as a whole, I see strength here with the dark green 96th percentile. And I'm also noticing strength in both of these different categories of metrics. Size and growth seem to be strong overall. The reason I'm saying that is because I'm noticing a lot of light green and dark green color coding here within the percentiles of each metric. Okay. So this tells me the size of this program is relatively large and growth is looking positive.
Very good.
Okay.
I mean, it's 90% growth in Google search volume. Student enrollment is at the 88th percentile in terms of 38. Those are very unusual numbers. So very high.
We're also seeing, very strong numbers in the employment category as well. Almost all of the metrics here are strong, but there are a couple metrics that aren't as strong that are very important to pay attention to. So the obvious ones, right? Job posting totals are very large here at the 91st percentile. We're seeing growth through the BLS historic growth, 1 year and 3 year. This 10-year future growth of 1.4%, seems low, but the metric here that really strikes me would probably be this BLS job openings per graduate. I don't know, Bob.
Yeah, I'd go with job postings per graduate personally.
Yep.
You'd be lucky to be able to hire somebody with these credentials. And so, though that job market's slowing down a bit too. But you see 3.3 job postings per graduate. That's very good, 83rd percentile. Nursing would be higher, for example. So it's not the best, but it's good. Pay is extraordinary, though.
Yeah, the pay looks very strong here. Okay.
I think it's interesting if you go back up that underemployed, that is actually the lowest underemployed number in our database, right? It's it's indexing at 1. So it's it's the lowest rate in our system.
Whenever I'm dealing with data analytics versus business analytics or whatnot, a lot of the times we're going to end up focusing on the award level, right? Like, what is the award level that you're looking to offer? Because I would suspect that the breakdown of the award levels might look a little different if we're looking at data analytics, data science
Mhm.
versus business analytics. So keep that in mind. So that's the purpose of the degree fit here on the right, is essentially designed to, make sure that you're considering this program that you're reviewing, whether it's a current program or a new program, within the most appropriate award level scope based on the market, right? So here we're noticing that it's a pretty even split almost between, well, not even, but
It's actually, if you think about what a small percentage of college graduates go on to get a master's, that's a very heavy percentage of master's graduates compared to
correct.
normal,
Yep.
right? So I would say here the sweet spot's master's. And then I'd say personal opinion, I think there's gonna be a lot of growth at the bachelor's level as well, because people can't find a person with a master's degree to do this work. So lots of demand for people who are trained at any level.
Yep. Then we have some demographic information down here, which we touched on first, the program of the month here. And on the left, we have competitive intensity, which really is the only alarming, I'll put air quotes over alarming, quadrant of information on this scorecard. We're seeing 134 campuses with graduates. This is actually receiving -4 points because this is being interpreted as very competitive at the 93rd percentile. But I'm less scared of this campuses with graduates, and I tend to pay a little bit more attention to the in-market program size metrics. For example, like average program completion and median program completion sizes, as well as the change in median program completion sizes. This, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we like to leverage this more as a proxy for if you were to enter this market, you're probably more likely to be around the 6 than, the 30 that someone might be promising you if we were to move forward with this program. What do you think about that, Bob?
Completely agree. Do remember that this is completions, everybody, not enrollment. So to get 6 completions in a 4-year program, you actually have to have a minimum of 24 people in the program, 4 in each freshman, sophomore, junior. And then there's going to be fallout. So realistically, I multiply that by something like 6 maybe to figure out how many people are probably enrolled across the 4 years of the program. So that'd be 36 people, not a big program at this point. But the other thing that you pointed out there is the median program size is going up. Now, it's not light years, it's up by 1. But that's encouraging that the program's probably going to grow for those who already offer it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we have a bunch of others people want to look at. So maybe we should.
Yeah, for sure. Really quickly, before we do that, just want to also highlight the competition index that Bob was talking about earlier. And I see just such a great question in the chat. I have the chat on my left screen. I see, can we see a change in graduate type and level over time? The answer to that is yes. I do have on the dev queue to be able to see that in this scorecard here. So hopefully, in the future, we will be able to have that in the scorecard. But in the competitors tab, you can populate that, and it is very powerful. So we could break down the entire family of 30.71s by award level over time, and you might be able to identify an award level that could serve as like a pocket for entry where maybe there's a lot more growth in a specific award level to focus in on. Okay.
Winnell, can you explain what a dev queue is?
A dev queue?
Yes, you said it's
Yeah.
in the dev queue. I just would love you to explain what that means.
That's where good ideas go to die.
No. That
so-
is so one of the major benefits of Gray Decision Intelligence continuing to invest heavily in customer success is that we're essentially investing in a team that can serve as a voice for our clients. And throughout that entire process, we're constantly hearing different ways and different ideas that could be very helpful for our clients moving forward. So as a result, we have a kind of customer success development feedback loop going on that results in new ideas and new additions being queued in for
so
moving forward.
It's the list of things we'd like to go do.
Exactly.
Has input from all sorts of people and has the usual gates that, in terms of resources that mean not everything we want to do gets done right away.
Yeah. But specifically that trend question, we've been getting it more and more. So I just appreciate getting it here on this webinar because it adds fuel to the fire there for the dev queue. So Thank you so much for that one. And of course, if you have any questions about how this is trending over time, just reach out to the appropriate people, and we're happy to kind of show you what those views look like for enrollment and completions by award level in this program family. Okay.
Let's look at one that came in late
Yeah.
from Colleen, construction engineering.
Okay.
And I'm afraid that's the last one we'll be able to do, but
Okay.
that's not the last one you could get. So if any of you would like to see the results for the particular program you've mentioned, Jonathan, you wanted to see Six Sigma certificates, we may have that. I'm happy to do that. Reach out, and we can actually reach out to you. We'll set you up with one of our folks who can actually show you the scorecard for that particular program. And by the way, when we're doing it one-on-one, we could even do it for your state as well. And if we were doing this together, we wouldn't be looking at national statistics. We'd be looking at the statistics for the particular market you serve.
Yes. Forgive me here. I noticed a
There it
couple
is.
codes with construction engineering, so I just want to make sure we're looking at the right ones here. Okay, so I'm assuming it's just the construction engineering, not the tech. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the construction engineering, but keep in mind there's also a tech, which I'm sure maybe the award levels are different or whatnot, but just let me know if I should be opening.
Yeah, tech would be the a 2-year program probably to help a construction engineer do their work.
Okay. So as I'm opening construction engineering, I did see a yellow color there. So that does suggest that the overall performance of this program is closer to the middle of the road. If I saw the color coding correctly. Let's just let it. Yep, we see that yellow 69th percentile. So we're seeing middle of the road, a lot of middle of the road here. So let's try to identify where that might be. And immediately what I'm struck by is that something might be going on here with the employment.
Yeah, we're not drawing, for some reason, this isn't crosswalking to jobs. Not sure why. So that it's something we'll have to clean up. So for now, accept our apologies. Let's look at the student demand data, and we'll get back to this and figure out if there's something going on that we're not aware of. What that usually means is we've crosswalked these jobs to a different SIP that we think is more relevant or more frequently used for a similar program.
Yep. But when it comes to student demand, we are capturing Google search volumes, which we can see here. No international page views, strong new student enrollments and on-ground completions. This program is essentially doesn't exist online is kind of what I'm seeing here. I mean, there might be one program or one institution that offers it. So for size, student demand, I mean, I've seen worse programs when it comes to the student demand. And then for the growth, we're just seeing some slight declines here in Google search volumes year over year, but everything else seems to be slightly increasing.
You know what I bet's going on here is this is going over into getting coded into one of the other engineering categories for jobs.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be mechanical, trying to think where this is going to get mapped for jobs. But I think what you're seeing in a way is this is a specialty program within engineering. And so, it's a subset of a subset of demand, and that is going to tend to be smaller. And as I say, on the jobs, I think we probably map them all into more general engineering.
Yeah, I think this is similar to like the communications family, the 09s. There are just so many different ones that when you get very niche into the specific communication zip codes, the employment data might look worse than it really is. And for that reason, we would want to also leverage just the 09, 01, 01, I think it is, just the communications general zip code.
So if we did that here and looked at more like 14, what would happen?
Yep.
Yeah, we'd probably the jobs are probably sitting under engineering general. That's probably right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, keep in mind though, right? If we were working through this together, we would probably spend more time diving into the standalone application associated with job postings here to really differentiate between, amongst these 9,500 job postings to see, are there any construction jobs within these 9,500? And we'd probably find that, to Bob's point, that there are a lot of jobs that overlap in this case. Okay.
And you can see, when you start to look at general engineering, the job market's very healthy.
Mhm.
Wages are good. We're over in the 90th percentile or higher in terms of volume of jobs. Almost 4 job postings per graduate, more like what you would expect. I will say careful on construction engineering right now. It's my understanding the construction market is not healthy at all. The combination of Amazon knocking out the retailers, then working from home, attacking the office space. There are not a lot of healthy sectors in construction right now.
Great.
All right. So thank you all very much. Really appreciate the interaction. And we will get back to each of you as we can. You're welcome to reach out to us directly if there's a particular program you want to look at. One of our VPs will get back to you and sit down and be happy to go through that with you.